Heavy snow potential, possibly some flooding right along the coast and some gusty winds. So let's get to it. Let's show you what has been happening across Pennsylvania. The system brought snow to the northeast and left its mark in Valley Forge National Historic Park in Pennsylvania today. A light dusting of snow covered the area with rain and snow mixing at times. There's a winter weather advisory in effect tonight, and rain and snow could continue tomorrow morning with breezy conditions and a high in the lower 40s expected. So this is a heavy, wet snow that is falling. Obviously, since it's so late in the season, you are getting the possibility of that heavy, wet snow. And right along the coast, if you'll notice, we do have a mix going on here of some rain and some snow. Now, since that snow is so heavy and so wet, we could see it accumulating on the power lines as well as the trees and snapping some of those trees and power lines. So power outages are a possibility. This is a classic nor'easter. Here's the low getting wound up and throwing that moisture right back on top of you there in the northeast coastline. And unfortunately, that is making for the potential for a lot of snow, and that's not exactly what folks want to hear. Now in Philadelphia, we've been seeing some snow, likewise in Baltimore, a little bit of a mix occurring right now in D.C. and Baltimore. New York City, Long Island, we've been seeing some snow, heavy at times, and we're looking for the snow to move right on through Hartford, Connecticut and Boston and into Worcester, Massachusetts, right about here. Now we do have a crew standing by in Worcester, Massachusetts. Our own Jeff Morrow is there. Jeff, how have conditions changed in the last hour or so?
They've changed rather dramatically, Janetta. About 2 hours ago, we might have had just a couple of flakes coming down, if that. But in about the last hour, hour and a half, we've seen a lot more in the way of some snow. Visibility has dropped. We were able to see the town of Worcester, which is down in the valley behind me. You might be able to see a couple of the lights still there from the town, but you can barely see that now. So the visibility definitely has started to come down. We are right at the airport. We are at definitely a higher elevation than downtown there. We're at about 1,000 feet. And there's still snow on the ground here from the storm just a couple of days ago, and it looks like, from what we understand, that we could be adding a lot to those totals, maybe another half a foot to even a foot if this storm really winds up.
Jeff, we've been talking about a lot of cities in the Northeast that have broken records for snowfall amounts this season. What's the status with Worcester?
Worcester has not broken their record yet. They are still 11 inches away. I think they have about 110 inches officially here, the record being just over 120. So they need, I think, 11 more inches to break the record. And you know what? You wouldn't think in April we would get that, but it's not out of the question with this storm.
No, it's not out of the question. Jeff, we're going to ask you to stay there tonight as the storm gets wound up, and we'll be coming back to you to see how things are going.
Okay.
All right, thanks a lot. Well, we definitely have a lot to talk about, and we showed you one radar. Let's look at another one. And this is a close-up view. We're talking about snow all the way into Hartford and Boston right now. New York City and Long Island Sound getting some snow, and it has been heavy at times. Here's Philadelphia. We've been reporting some heavy snow for you there, as well as Atlantic City. So this storm is really, really starting to dump a lot of snow. In New York City proper, we do have winter storm advisory in effect, or snow advisory as a matter of fact. Long Island and New York City could pick up as much as 4 to 6 inches of snow, maybe even a little more than that for Long Island itself. So we are really going to have to watch things for you on the Jersey Shore, as well as New York City proper and Manhattan. Here's the specific forecast. Obviously, the 6 to 12 inches of snow is possible for interior regions, at least 6 inches of snow for Boston before all is said and done. New York City, same story for you. Temperatures hovering just above the freezing mark in all of these locations, even though we are still seeing snow, the heavy wet snow. But notice the 70s and the 80s back in parts of the plains. That warmth is going to be moving in your direction in the Northeast, so we do have some good news in the horizon. So we will turn it back over to the studio and Dan Atkinson, and he's got that forecast for you.
And Janetta, the storm generated thunderstorms along parts of the North Carolina coast during the night. Residents in the small is intensifying slowly as it moves on up the area from off coastal Virginia, and by tomorrow this time it should be off the coast of Cape Cod. High pressure will be building in behind that. That high pressure center is now over the upper Mississippi Valley, and it's going to be resulting in some frigid weather tonight over the southeastern states, and there are several areas which are under freeze warnings, particularly from the middle sections of the Carolinas on down into extreme east central Georgia. Taking a look now at the radar view, you can see the precipitation spinning as that low begins to throw moisture back up from the Atlantic back into the coastal areas particularly. And out in the west, there are some spotty showers. Missoula, Montana reporting light rain at this hour, as is Salem, Oregon, and Seattle, Washington. Here's a look now at some of the current temperatures around the nation. Temperatures are in the 30s across much of the Northeast. 34 now in New York, 38 in Washington, and the temperatures are going to be, well, as of this time now, these are the 24-hour temperature changes, and we have passed those on by, but temperatures are cooling down in the Northeast as cold air flows into that storm center. Here's a look now at the pattern that has been set up. The locked pattern for the last few weeks. We've had mild spring.
These are at zero. The snow is so heavy. Here's our area of low pressure, and it is definitely doing a number on us here in the Northeast. With the cold air in place, we have a heavy, wet snow falling in Philadelphia, as well as New York City, LaGuardia, Kennedy, and Long Island, all reporting snow at this hour. The snow extends on north into Hartford and even into Worcester, Massachusetts. We have a crew there, and they are telling us that, yes, the snow has begun. Now, in Baltimore and D.C., we're talking about rain at this hour, but just a few miles away in Philadelphia, well, this is where it is all snow at the time, and actually Atlantic City is reporting heavy snow. Here is Atlantic City, so heavy snow here, snow in Philadelphia, but in Baltimore and Washington, D.C., we are talking about rain. Okay, so these are snow, and obviously snow up the eastern seaboard. We could see the possibility of some beach erosion, especially at the time of high tide near Boston, and we could be seeing some very, very windy conditions. So with the heavy wet snow in New York City, I want to remind you that that could be accumulating obviously on the grassy areas. We could see slush on the roads, and we could see accumulations on the trees as well as the power lines. So unfortunately, we could be looking at power outages tonight into tomorrow. Now, as the storm gets wrapped up, it's going to be a slow mover. As it moves on up in a northeasterly fashion, it will throw that moisture onto the higher elevations. And that's where we're expecting as much as 6 to 12 inches of snow, possibly over a foot in some interior regions. We're thinking about 3 to 6 inches of snow for the major metropolitan areas of Boston, New York City, and Long Island. Possibly a little more in Long Island. Temperatures in the 30s, hovering actually right above the freezing mark. But you know what? We do have some good news in sight. Here we have the cold air in the northeast, but look at the warmth here in the plains and all across the west. We are talking about 70 and 80 degree weather. That is in the forecast. That's right. We are going to see a change in this weather pattern. It's about time, right? For a look at the rest of the current situation and the forecast, we go back to the studio and Dan Atkinson.
And Janetta, here in the southeast, it's not snow, but thunderstorms with heavy rains that are causing problems. The same shows water equivalent of better than an inch across the coastal sections of the northeast, some light amounts in the northwest. A snowfall forecast through 7 o'clock tomorrow shows the heavier snow, as you see, from southern New Hampshire down across Massachusetts and into Connecticut, and lighter amounts back to the west. Taking a look at the low temperatures on Wednesday morning, teens in the Great Lakes, 20s down in the Ohio Valley, 50s down in Texas and out in the west, 30s in the higher elevations, but 40s and 50s over much of the western portion of the country. Highs on Wednesday.
That we are looking at all kinds of snow across the northeast. A nor'easter, a classic storm, wound up leaving behind its mark in the form of heavy snow across the northeast. Good evening, I'm Janetta Jones, and we are looking at cold weather for the eastern half of the United States and warm weather in the west. So what a contrast. Temperatures running some 10 to 15 degrees above normal in the west, some 10 to 15 degrees below normal from the Ohio Valley down to the southeast. The 80s in Amarillo, Texas, 82. We may see 90 by tomorrow. However, it's cold in the east. 50s for you in Atlanta and Nashville, 30s in the Ohio Valley, 30s up the eastern seaboard, and that nor'easter is doing a number on the coast. Already we have seen significant snowfall amounts in parts of Pennsylvania and West Virginia, and this is nothing compared to what we are going to be seeing. That's right. We are expecting heavy snow possibilities for folks right along interior regions of southern New England. Tell you what, let's look at a satellite vantage point as it rolls into motion. This is a classic nor'easter, the low forming just off of the coast of Virginia right now, and it has a counterclockwise rotation with the wind flow. So that picks up the moisture off of the Atlantic and throws it right back on top of you in southern New England. Heavy snow being reported in Atlantic City, New Jersey, snowing in Philly, snowing at Kennedy and LaGuardia airports right here in New York City. Long Island reporting snow. And the snow actually extends as far north as Boston and Worcester and